In the far future, the world was flooded with dungeons where portals of no origin suddenly appeared everywhere, leaving behind mysterious monsters and strange items hidden in the dark tunnels beyond their reach. People find themselves rich because they can buy the best things in the world: healing elixirs, super dense dragon horns, and the rare skill of getting them all. That sudden spark made the entire world wake up together. These folks got physically supercharged, and now they are ready for any adventure. And then, as they stumbled back from the dark caves carrying golden weapons, they officially became hunters for all to see. It was in the end that this created such a rich system where anyone who woke up with a top job instantly became a respected leader. We didn't discriminate. Everyone who got up at night and started working, even the ones with messy hair or questionable pasts, was ready to dive into a life-changing career when their dream job finally popped out of the ground. Nomia woke up a S-tier trapmaster so she could finally take down those monsters inside the dungeon. And guess what? The very people who can run through traps now own the whole dungeon itself. Nomia felt so thrilled after waking up last year that this day was finally the perfect chance for a full trash run. He woke up with that mysterious rank and immediately grabbed a dummy, aiming to prove he could break it before the judge even looked at him. Nomia squinted as he pulled the trigger, hoping his trap would finally work, but nothing happened at all. Nomia stirs deep confusion within him, yet he stubbornly refuses to give up and believes the world itself might be holding his breath for a strange glitch. He keeps trying, yet nothing works, leaving both the examiner and the other prospect staring blankly in bewilderment as if they have found something truly odd. The examiner asked why he was talking about power, working in dangerous places with traps all around. So the boy tried to defend himself by saying they just need to be careful not to fall into one of them before the danger gets too bad. Nomia won't trust him. She thinks he's a fraud who made up his position, and calling himself a delusional dude just makes her think he's crazy. In a high-stakes meeting where Nomia shouted, "Look at your job. It clearly shows you're scran," the examiner waited for his turn to speak, but realized he couldn't see anyone else. He finally stepped forward and tried to convince him about something nobody else could understand, even though no one else could view another person's status window. He was desperate enough to ask the examiner to put him into a dangerous dungeon where everyone would know exactly what to do next to see if he could really handle it all along. The examiner says dungeons are really nasty and you can't get in without showing off your fighting skills, which is why hunters need a license first to prove they can handle the risks. Nomia then asked the teacher, "What exactly did you do in your adventure?" and said, "Well, I didn't just explore dungeons. I also fix things." Nomia dropped the ball because he couldn't handle the weight, which left him becoming a clumsy punching bag during hunter training. Nomia struggles with starvation because she can't become a hunter, and one of the hunters who uses her as a punching bag is her former classmate, Asenuma, who keeps venting his own dungeon frustration all while pretending to be a trainer. Nomia didn't think the air was worth clearing because he never actually believed Nomia held his soul, so every time he tried to do so, the boy got slammed hard into the wall. Just after the last training session ended, Nomia gently reminded Asenuma that he had promised to be back soon. Asenuma promised the guard a special escort permit so that any adventurer not hunting could finally enter the dangerous dungeon without enduring his relentless beatings. Nomia sees Asenuma, so overwhelmed by the desperation that she drops her guard completely, telling him there is only one last chance before they both fall. It's hard to believe he's pulling up a permit and handing it to him, but Nomia knows there will be a price if he does. Nomia felt like a giant bullseye as she saw her team of thugs, including the man who used to scold her at school, walking straight into her room just to get a permit. Even though everything in this place is incredibly risky, Nomia can't help himself because desperation forces him forward into that dangerous dungeon. It turns out Asenuma and his buddies beat him all over and tear him up, yet he holds on tightly because he's hoping to get the permit to go. As the final straw hit the door, Asenuma broke the permit and shouted to Nomia, "I'm not letting you go because I still have a little hope left." Asenuma lets Nomia down with the force of a thrown stone, causing her to drop a sharp object that defies her own strength and sends her stumbling back into the shadow. Asenuma and his crew get kicked off the game floor by Nomia while pretending to be bored. It turns out that being a hunter is actually a cruel joke. Nomia finally woke up because she realized the truth. Asenuma had indeed told her a lie. It turns out that only sponsors get the permission to let others go into the dungeon without cost. Anyone who gets hurt or dies is solely their own fault. The funny part of this plan? Well, that's actually not what makes it work. Imagine a guy walking into his mansion with no money. Then suddenly someone asks him for a one-time lump sum, so he can get into the house without paying rent. No one knows that Nomia holds an impossible secret, but she keeps her hope tight even when the door is locked and nobody else can see what's waiting inside. 9 little things are coming up for Nomia, but before they can go anywhere near the door, it turns out that Nomia is actually about to be crushed by a giant brick. Then the Hunter Association launched an emergency blast, telling everyone suddenly how deadly a worldwide dungeon break had become. Ah yes, it's an incredible surprise. Suddenly, everyone has become trapped in a dark, scary dungeon where creatures are chasing them everywhere, and the people scrambling for escape just to avoid getting crushed or killed by their own chaos. Nomia starts running in fear, but a flash of insight hits him. Maybe the gods were meant for him because he's the perfect match for being trapped in these tight spaces where his magic actually shines brightest. Nomia wasted no time activating the trap scanner. It was waiting right there to find every single hole in the maze before anyone got inside. Just like everyone thought would happen, he was absolutely certain where they all ended up, even though Nomia couldn't believe her eyes because her happiness had taken on boundless limits. And then, he wasn't surprised at all when it turned out his prayers were indeed answered and his magic didn't come across as fake. He can finally become a real hunter after all these days of waiting and hoping. Nomia knows exactly which locks are shut, so he can sneak past the armor that keeps hunting monsters, while the dungeon's hunters keep trying to scare him away. He grabbed a stick in his hand and felt like he was about to crush the monster because he had learned the art of using traps so well from his master. 2 people were trying to get away from each other as their sun fell down, which left them with nowhere else to go. The monster was on the verge of crushing the boy just as Nomia launched him into the air, holding up his staff so they could block the blow together before the final strike hit. Nomia turns his head back like a tricked-out puppet so the giant boss can slip through his fingers. He swung the club wildly and missed, leaving him with a quiet frown. He laughs at the monster's foolish misspelled throw, yet he knows it was the perfect hook set up by someone else. He saw his trap was set up right in front of him, but when he tried to throw the rod into it, Nomia just locked onto him instantly. The sudden sound of silence snaps the air when the trap finally clicks, revealing a heavy iron pendulum swinging down like a deadly weapon that will instantly crush its target before any movement even begins. Nomia is thrilled to hear that she finally cracked the code for fighting monsters with traps. Thanks to Nomia slaying the giant beast, the tiny boy finally finds home with his mother once more. A few seconds later, a swarm of armored monsters jumps out onto the battlefield. Since Nomia is overwhelmed by their sheer number, he quickly considers his next move to save everyone. He didn't have time to wait for the monsters to chase him down. Instead, he slammed his hand into the air, and a massive boulder erupted from above, instantly crushing those fleeing creatures beneath. The magic spell lets him summon deadly traps without needing his touch, but he still spent a lot of magical energy doing so. He had won that battle and pushed Nomia up a step so she could climb higher than anyone else. He also discovered that every time he moved forward, he caught himself learning new tricks and gaining fresh skills along the way. When he finally figured that out, he was so thrilled that he felt like he'd unlocked a secret he never knew existed. Suddenly, a squad of friends who had been watching them for hours watched as Nomia crushed the evil beasts and stepped out from their hideout to show everyone the hero's victory. They praised Nomia because she was truly a good hunter, so when they asked where to go, she came up with a secret. She isn't an official hunter at all, but just a handy one who finds perfect hiding spots in plain sight. Imagine stepping into a dark dungeon and realizing that somewhere hidden in the darkness lies your absolute safety. A silent wall of pure security where no monster can attack you or any danger lurks behind walls. But here's the catch. Figuring out exactly where this safe zone really is becomes the real problem. Civilians tell him that finding a safe spot is the main worry since they rely on skilled teams who quickly go home when something goes wrong. Even though the girl says she won't worry about that, Nomia tells her she has nothing to be worried about at all. Nomia places a hand down to trigger his trap scan, helping him pinpoint where the danger is hidden. By holding this tool, he could spot exactly where no traps exist, proving that was truly a safe place to go. Nomia spots the way ahead at Higashiwa Park, so he shouts to the group to head straight there now. The group panicked because nobody trusted them anymore. They burst out at once and rushed toward Nomia, who calmly led them into a hidden safe zone where no monsters lurked. The little ones burst into joy as Nomia saves them from a gruesome death, so the old woman and boy who knew her best can say goodbye with gratitude for his kindness. Nomia felt like he was running away from a trap when he suddenly disappeared from safety and went straight for trouble again. He figured out that when someone finds a place full of traps, the only thing that's really good hiding in there is someone. He sprints toward the spot and thinks, something mighty must be hiding here. He paused at the edge of the forest and heard a strange whisper from behind as he reached toward the door that leads to the end of the world. As Nomia spins in a panic, his heart races as he finally catches up to the Asenuma who were chasing him, and the terror that gripped him deepens every time the killer's shadow lingers behind him. Asenuma notices that Nomia hides behind fear while avoiding all monsters, including himself. So he ends up in a world with absolutely no creatures at all. Without a sound warning, Asenuma leaped forward toward Nomia while clutching his heavy rod out of sight, ready to shatter him with it. Nomia dodged the blow and yelled in panic about what Asenuma was doing. He reminded him that he's right now in an urgent situation where picking a fight isn't even a choice anymore. Asenuma then replies, "Oh, I don't care. The whole world has turned into a game where everyone just has to survive themselves." Asenuma says now he's free to kill anyone who pisses him off because the powerful rule the world. In his wild philosophy, he reveals he's curious if killing humans will raise his level. And without doubt, Nomia can see that Asenuma has gone crazy. He noticed that his latest move felt strangely off-putting because it looked like Asenuma was trying to dodge those deadly traps while watching him. Asenuma soon notices that Nomia is puzzled by something, so he decides to share a small piece of his own secret for her understanding. Asenuma grabbed his weapon and turned on the device, shocking everyone with the answer he had just found. Basically, the trap searcher isn't quite as precise as Nomia's method, yet it still helps catch any enemies hiding right behind them. And as the only thing the Asana was actually holding, Nomia wondered exactly where it came from when that low-ranking hunter had just left. Asenuma kept chewing as revealed to be just getting that loot for a second before it became part of his entire morning adventure. Asenuma thinks using a trap searcher makes him feel like an unstoppable force because he has already found where all the traps are hidden. Nomia was caught in a predicament and decided to break Asenuma's trap by forcing his own activation. Oh no, there's clearly a hazard above where Nomia needs to pull out the trigger for the trap, but he can't get his hand around the danger without accidentally activating it instead. A swarm of heavy steel bars comes down from the sky and crashes directly into Asenuma. As if the ground had been pulled under him, Asenuma collapses onto his knees while Nomia laughs, thinking he has finally solved the puzzle. Then, a moment later, Asenuma stands tall on his own feet, looking perfectly healthy. Asenuma burst into laughter and gasped as he caught Nomia's eye. She was clearly not the kind of person who would be set up to be a trap master. Nomia can't stop believing his vision when he spots that spark on Asenuma's back. It clearly means Asenuma's body is protected by an unbreakable shield. The super strong guardian isn't just a fancy gadget. It actually acts like a wall around you. Every single time someone tries to hurt you, it blocks them out and stops them from doing anything bad again. Asenuma kept giggling while remembering how he stole some gear from a shop right before the chaos started, and that exact moment gave him the perfect weapon to fight the guard. As an important person who has finally discovered how to join high-tier hunters, Asenuma says that with these new tools, it is now his turn to become part of their group. Asenuma dives after him before Nomia has a chance to catch up, slamming him into the ground with a mighty kick that sends the man flying backward. Nomia crashed to the ground in agony, while Asenuma grabbed a rod to wrestle her back into the fight. He laughed like a crazy maniac as he beat Nomia and shouted that this was where his legend began. Anesuma's anger boils over when he discovers his team has been ignored by the association because he holds an elite hunter rank. He wanted to jump into that dangerous high-level dungeon to prove his skills, but instead, everything ruined his plans and made him furious. Just like before, he throws his rage onto the faces of Nomia and Nomia, who suddenly realize he's running out of time and they're about to go rogue. In a desperate fight for his life, Nomia stumbles into an invisible trap that instantly dissolves, proving that nothing can stop Asenuma, even when he is trying to save himself. Nomia keeps chasing after Asenuma, with every trap thrown at him, trying to slip out of the chase. At some point, Nomia realizes that his entire mission is failing because Asenuma sees right through him due to this powerful trap searcher. Even if you land a bad shot at Asenuma, nothing matters because his invisible guard is there to keep you safe. That's when Nomia realized that his move was completely out of reach. Suddenly, he got the pop-up telling him that something has changed in his personal status window. Nomia noticed the shift in his mind, realizing that what he had once thought of as just another skill was actually a clever trick he had learned every single time. He reveals a new magic trick where he creates deadly traps using powerful spells. So Nomia thinks he actually has the right shot at defeating Asenuma. And then Nomia wasted no time, finding himself perfectly positioned to strike, and Asana went on a furious rant about why he was stuck in such a strange spot. Nomia looks at him and says, "I'm going to show you what your skills can really do." As Nomia finally unleashed her new power, a towering black log erupted silently from the void before Asenuma, spooked by its sudden presence and terrifying nature. The sudden silence before the log slammed into him meant he was thrown backward with nothing left to do but watch the wall fall behind him. Nomia smiled so hard that he knew his new skill was working perfectly. He's so happy because now he has that fighting talent and can finally beat the guy. He laughs as he pulls a second trigger on the trap, then screams in terror because he sees it's just another day for that kind of garbage to build its own traps. Nomia stepped forward and told him clearly that he isn't the kind of person he was, for his role as a job trap master was unlike any other. Nomia swings back with a thunderous splash that sends the sky crashing down like a falling leaf, letting Nomia reach his towering peak to claim the dropped item before the heavens rise up one last time for him. Asenuma holds his head in fear when Nomia drops the item onto the ground. Suddenly it reveals to be a bucket and does no harm whatsoever, causing Asenuma to go wild, while Nomia quickly figures out that his current power level simply cannot generate anything more powerful. Imagine he's trying to unleash big explosions every day. That means he needs tons of magic to do so. As an expert in ancient magic, Asenuma mocked Nomia and asked if the bucket was the main weapon of creation. That way, he knew he had nothing to fear. Nomia's words hung in the air like a secret warning. The bucket was merely a rattle, and she immediately ordered the boy to walk closer and examine the mess of things around his boots. Dawn arrives at the spot where Nomia has been setting up a trap for him to fall into. As soon as the shadows of darkness creep up behind him, a speeding saw slams into the road right in front of his face. Even though he screamed in terror, the guard's arm kept a tight hold on the knife so it couldn't cut through him. As soon as Asenuma vanished into the shadows, a deadly trap surged forward and caught his eye. He runs frantically through a wall of needles that shoot straight at his face, but the movement keeps him from stopping and making him run even harder as he is forced forward by the relentless force. He fell back in the exact moment he realized he had slipped into a new trap. He suddenly dashes around while realizing his invisible guard might snap as soon as he falls into a trap again. As Asenuma thought he was secure, suddenly a deadly surge of lightning erupted from above, slamming into him before he could even process the threat and realizing quickly that he had crossed his final threshold before he could take another bite of death. The moment he realized he was trapped outside the door, his mind had already drifted to a different hole full of nothingness. This time around, it was an unbreakable chain, and it immediately seized Asenuma. With Asenuma incapacitated, Nomia walked up to him, explaining that the room contained a trap combo, though he didn't notice. Basically, a trap combo is a mechanism designed to repel intruders with high durability because they activate one after another. Nomia suddenly snaps his fingers, sending a massive bolt flying upward right as he gets caught in it. A terrified Asenuma begs desperately as she realizes the monster inside her is too strong and willing to kill anyone who gets close, screaming so loud it shakes the floor. As Unshamed's armor held firm against a falling bolt that shattered beneath its weight. Asenuma fell from the sky, landing completely exhausted right next to Nomia in her arms. Nomia sees the battle won and lets go of his mission to finish the fight, knowing the enemy is gone. But Nomia forces every person who tries to hide a secret to make the trap disappear for them. Asenuma watched Nomia realize he had been tricked by a deadly trap combination, costing the invisible guard dearly. After knocking out Asenuma and running toward his legendary treasure, Nomia steps forward. The soldier glanced sharply at his weapon and instantly learned that the enemy behind him was an extremely rare Class S rank, so he quickly made his move to dodge. Because these treasures are always elusive and scarce, they truly command the highest worth. It's not just about their rarity. It's a powerful force that makes anyone holding them suddenly capable of wielding immense power itself. In that split second, Nomia opens her chest. His magic status shoots up so fast, she almost feels like she's flying away. Despite not having magic, finding a special object suddenly made every problem in his life seem easier. He discovered an ore belonging to an ancient mage who once gifted him a magical boost. Now, with that extra power in hand, he feels completely prepared for any dangerous traps Nomia might create. He jumped so hard excited by his new skill that he decided to put it all into action right now. He found a whole pack of big monster insects that were his best friends as he wanted them to fight. Nomia never stops her magic. She instantly summons a fiery cone of flame right in front of the scary wolf to burn it away. A single blast of inferno fire instantly eats away the monster, turning its flesh into ash like a delicious roasted roast. Nomia ducks away as soon as those two guys make their appearance at the scene. Those two were stunned by the sight of such terrifying monsters vanishing in such a short time, and there was no doubt who did it all at once. Someone with the power to turn them into ghosts instantly. Nomia hides behind a wall, watching the two strangers walk past him like ghosts. They are part of the Hunter Association's defense force, so Nomia thinks they're just trying to get everyone out before things go wrong. Moments later, a stranger showed up and told his friends that the main team had spotted a giant boss monster in that spot. They think their brilliant new plan will smash the boss. Nomia stares wide-eyed as the hunters confirm that the boss has already been defeated by their own hand. Basically, an area boss stands at the very top of dungeon monsters, making them incredibly strong targets for hunters. But they're also the only ones you hit first, because once defeated, everyone else inside that specific group vanishes instantly and becomes just another safe zone. He was so excited he couldn't wait to see what Nomia decided to do. The hunters in the boss zone haven't even seen their target yet, so the monsters they're battling are already making it hard for them to keep going. Moments later, the boss monster popped out of the shadows, shattering the air with a blinding heat ray as it announced its arrival. The leader of the hunters team screamed at his buddies to leave the stadium right away, knowing that the boss was coming back soon. The team leader was a disaster at first because the monster's falling debris blocked his path to escape, trapping him and ending the mission. The hunter, a woman, realized she couldn't move any further after seeing a monster that was far beyond her reach. Nomia is running up to the stadium with wild excitement, ready to unleash her powerful monster on him while already locking in a dangerous trap for it. Mummy plans to crush the boss monster, hoping that doing so will finally stop everyone from having fun fighting around him. As the warlord's battle rages on, the artillery squad fires its weapons in deadly force to crush the beast into oblivion. The loud explosion sounds like the hunters finally took down their monster. When the fog finally lifts, the boss monster stays right there, and it turns out to have a superpower that instantly fixes any little scratches or bumps you take. As he looked at the scene, Nomia suddenly understood why the hunters were in trouble. They were trapped in an endless loop where every move by the monsters only made things worse, because no single hit could ever finish them off. Even though Asenuma's invisible guard felt like an annoying headache, Nomia finds the fact that the monster can cure itself so much worse, because it keeps growing without taking any harm away. Yet Nomia believes she's got her own way through this beast, because it doesn't look like something that really needs her help. The little girl Nomia stares at the monster being screamed at by a lady hunter as she decides exactly how to act next. Even though the lady hunter feels scared, she decides to play her tricks so the other people can finally make it out of there. The boss monster won't play tricks. Instead, he slams down instantly onto his enemies with an unrelenting burst of heat that sends everyone flying back to their bedsheets in seconds. She thought the lady hunter was truly gone and closed her eyes long enough to wait for the end. Just then, surprise hit her as Nomia emerged from the shadows, dragging her along exactly like a wounded princess, completely out of her control. She turns her head to check for safety before asking, "Where are we going?" Nomia waited, feeling the cold steam rise from beneath her as she saw the heat beam approach, and then she fired a bolt of warp magic into it right before it hit her. Basically, that mysterious warp trap appears in dungeons and snaps the target instantly into a spot. Like Nomia used it for emergencies, and turns out to be such a powerful tool you can't resist using it just like magic. The lady stumbles back in surprise as she questions Nomia about his identity, knowing he couldn't even make it to a proper explanation at this very second. Moon prepared for departure, yet he secretly told the girl hunter to tell his friends that he'd go solo with the evil boss monster instead. So her plan was to get the monster running a disaster in the city, yet she stopped because she felt it would hurt people too much if he did that. Nomia tells her the evacuation finish line is crossed, and now the city is ready for battle. Nomia doesn't stop talking, and she's gone, leaving the lady hunter alone and shaken. The hunters are still struggling to defeat that mighty boss because of how well it can bounce back after being knocked down. Oh no, the hunters think they're going to be killed right now because of this terrifying fall, so suddenly the entire thing hits and knocks them all over in a wild rush. Yes, people say that being humiliated feels like a punishment, but actually in this story Nomia just dropped an item right onto the monster to make it look worried and try to get your eye. Nomia's grin made the monster jump, begging him to chase him because they were both in charge of the world. The boss thinks provoking a heat beam will make Nomia happy. The other hunters stare at them as Nomia slams the giant beast down into the ground so it can't run away anymore. Nomia sneaks behind the line of hunters and dodges the charge, leaving the attackers stunned in shock. One of the friends thinks Nomia can fly, but the experienced hunter sees exactly where she landed. The suspenseful tale of the invisible springboard was finally revealed as it caused Nomia to leap upward with surprising grace from the clouds. Basically, that guy was absolutely right since Nomia didn't use a dangerous or offensive trick. Instead, she launched herself into a very safe springboard so he could just run away from the fireball instantly. The ninja Nomia figured out he could leap so high as to land safely on top of a hidden trap, which acts like an invisible shield during aerial fights. As Nomia keeps pushing the trap's magic, she finally finds herself hovering directly above that terrifying boss monster and prepares to trigger it. Once he got the monster looking at him, Nomia headed straight for the town so the beast could keep coming after him and fall into the very trap he had set there. Just like Nomia wanted, that boss monster chased him all over again and over again. Then, the hunters passed along the news, telling everyone that the beast had blown up its brakes and was racing straight for that dangerous substation. It's hard to tell if Nomia got caught by the monster or if she just made a move that saved her, because the trap was too late anyway, so she didn't die. Nomia is so happy he found the monster in such a stretch of distance. Yet he can't help but remember how hard he worked to get it there. As Nomia decides to reveal a new kind of hell to the boss monster while she walks toward that special trap, first, he builds a massive, unbreakable chain to stop the monster from moving further. When the beast is finally pinned down by Nomya's heavy iron axe swing, its suffering becomes undeniable. He didn't stop at that point because he's got a big racing saw and starts cutting right into the monster. Nomia doesn't even blink when she sees the monster still floating in the air after he hurled it so hard that it's a quick death trap. He knew the monster was far bigger than any normal one, so killing it meant doing something truly wild. The ninja Nomia keeps firing a barrage of falling rocks to slam against the monster while simultaneously lighting up a massive inferno burner on top of it. Nomia laughs at the creature, wondering what kind of happy life they're living. A massive cloud of ash and glowing embers gathers around the giant beast as its feet become trapped by crumbling stone pillars, trapping it in a precarious flight toward the heavens above. Noon's own kind of magic was still working perfectly, even though Nomia didn't know yet whether to trust her or not, so she just kept putting more stuff into the machine without really thinking about it anymore. As Nomia steps forward to attack the giant beast, his hand snaps open and a massive bolt of lightning shoots straight out, slicing through its flesh instantly. The giant lightning spear didn't just appear. It was the biggest trap anyone had ever seen, and Nomia was already sure about it when she finally broke open that door. The lightning spear got stuck deep inside the beast's flesh, driving a desperate rage that made it want to lash out at the witch, who instead swung her arm as if trying to escape with the help of a springboard. It turns out that Nomia has another weapon for the monster, an iron pendulum to smash nearby power towers, triggering massive electrical surges. Meanwhile, a broken lightning spear is already stuck within the beast. It gets trapped as Nomia plans to kill the boss with his fatal electric blast. The creature screams in agony, while high-level electricity floods its body, ready to finish off the threat completely. It looks like that bulky monster is turning completely into a wire and burning away to leave behind black ash. Nomia knew something was seriously wrong if this really turned into a normal dungeon. He's got a lot of honesty for this job, so he won't even try to push himself hard against the boss with all his might. And then Nomia's clever eyes spot the tall tower nearby. She knows exactly where the hidden trap will be, and she has no choice but to set one right now. Nomia told the beast that it had been stuck in trouble since the beginning. As the boss finally slays down, the entire dungeon opens up to reveal that Nomia now holds a massive 4-point advantage over everyone else. Nomia stood up straight as if nothing had happened before, holding her breath and knowing exactly how long she'd endured when the scary monsters were finally gone in that tough little dungeon alone. 9 years passed as Nomia stared at piles of stones and books, yet he refused to venture out into the unknown because he was too scared for what lay beyond the walls. Nomia kept making things scary for his family because he was the only person who truly believed in him. His family tried hard to stop him from going out hunting because it's so scary. Even the great Nomia can't stop giving up. He keeps refusing to leave for good. Nomia walks through the broken-down communication base where the monster hunters are gone, and he stares wide-eyed at the place where he was supposed to be defeated. But when the scary dungeon was removed, Nomia thought everyone could talk again. He finds the communication room quickly with a quick move of his trap, then swipes the key shut. Nomia takes her time to admire how neatly arranged the room is before she steps into it. He's happy, too, to see that all those machines are doing their work properly. He reached for the camera viewfinder with a sigh of relief as he saw that his eyes could read the key alone instead of needing someone's signature. He immediately restarts the whole system so everything can come back to a normal state once the bad connection stops. Once the computer wakes up again, it immediately begins scanning the whole room at once. The system soon gathered information about the area and displayed its analysis, which revealed that the cleared dungeon was an A-rank one. Nomia gasps as she sees the ground beneath her feet covered in a wall of impossible obstacles. Nomia lets out a sigh of relief as the computer begins scanning other parts of the country while she watches the data stream through her window. Basically, an area is just a specific spot inside a dungeon where cities divide up fields. But suddenly when the entire world turns into a dungeon, those once hidden spaces have popped out so big it's hard for Nomia to believe that this whole system is actually trying to figure everything out. Suddenly, in Nomia, it clicked into place that she could very well try to map out how the whole globe is divided with this new system. The system drops below the surface and keeps showing errors, then suddenly gives Nomia permission to get region data only if her field of view extends 10,000 kilometers away. Nomia realized her mind was spinning so fast that she had to stop everything and check if the data was big enough to break through. She knew she couldn't look at the entire world right now, but she was happy to know what was happening around here instead. He thought his mom and sister lived far apart, so he decided to see what's going on right now in both of their homes instead. Nomia is constantly worrying about how dangerous her new zones get. It took a long time for the computer to finish its work, and Nomia nearly threw up so bad he could barely open his eyes to see everything was already marked as an A level. Fear grips Nomia, for he truly thinks the entire region could be swept away by monsters. Then he looked closely at the screen and saw that those areas were still active, meaning they hadn't crashed yet. And Nini was relieved because some of the places had been cleaned up again and the people were talking to each other once more. 9 tiny mice were so stunned by seeing how many powerful hunters had gone about clearing up their homes, each following a different path as they chased down their prey in turn. Then nightfall falls over Nomia when she realizes he must first check for the safety of her family before anything else happens. He checked the first location in Sujide-2, where his mother lives. Well, thanks for clearing that mess out. Now all the connections are working again. He figured he could talk to her and started dialing straight away. Fortunately, the call connects and Nomia checks in on her mom. She says the hunter came back and things are under control. Mom then asks him about his own region and lets him know that she's fine. Just as he does, he asks if his mom has reached his sister Shiori. A mysterious phone call to a person named Shiori vanished the second time it rang due to terrible signal interference. So before he drops the switch, Nomia gently tells her mom to stay put and don't rush off to anything new. Nomia figured out quickly. Since mom was already staying safe, she had to focus her whole heart on making sure her little sister didn't get hurt. She thinks she's staying home with her sister while she goes to school for medicine in the western part of the city. He ran over to check the westward ward right away and found that it wasn't cleared yet, so he didn't even feel sorry because the signal wasn't coming back on either. Suddenly, a new report plays that tells a story of hunter boys from the westward area trying to find something missing. Oh, look at how powerful those people are. They've finally taken full charge of this whole district, and yet the giant boss monster keeps twitching on in the background. Just kidding, it's not that scary at all. In the video where the hunters stood up and told everyone they were not dependent on the outside, they claimed that the people in the West were actually free to go anywhere themselves. His eyes won't believe him when he sees this, for his sister is truly stuck inside the box. Suddenly, he heard many strangers arrive at the door, so he quickly activated a new trap skill to hide from them all. Nomia was launched from the air at a frantic speed because his own confusion made him think like a fool, and suddenly the entire city roof felt like a slippery slide to him. He's been so happy he ran away from home, but now he knows something else is wrong. His magic isn't working, and the garbage bag is his real ceiling. He remembers that the glowing orb raised his magic powers, and at the same time boosted his ultimate power ceiling. It's a common rule that chaining your traps drains your energy fast, so his battle against the boss monster has just begun. Nomia decided to go on a serious quest to find out how to improve his skills and boost his mana pool while the group gathers their resources for battle. Just then, he hears her call from his sister while praying that she stays safe at home. The call didn't quite come through because the radio signal got blocked by something loud nearby. Nomia asks Shiri if he's feeling okay, and the boy nods reassuringly, saying it won't hurt for her to rest without worrying about the world. She still hadn't said goodbye when the phone finally rang. Nomia is completely bewildered because the clearing isn't done, so his sister insists it's actually safe for now. And then another story begins about that cruel hunter who said his last words were worrying because of the message he sent out. Nomia quickly realized that being left alone by him was a terrible idea. So he really has to check if his little sister is okay by herself before she can trust him again, and he'll need a fresh cup of mana to get started. Later, he slipped past guards and stole a handful of potion from the empty supply room before anyone could notice. Ninomiya looked at the pack of hunters and said she didn't care if they had anything left after they got their bite taken away. He's going to try really hard to make sure the bill pays for itself soon. After pouring the drink, his magic instantly revived, and Ninomiya felt so happy that she couldn't help but celebrate the fix for his low energy. However, he still has to make it from his central home to the West Ward area, where he must also pass through those two other regions, Kawabi Ward and EY Ward, which are currently unclurbed and will only clear once he gets there. Without a doubt, he knows this fight will be tough, so he's right on his guard even though he can't quite save both of those dangerous zones yet. He thought the battle against a monster boss was actually a disaster if he went alone and ran out of magic before reaching the enemy's final boss. So Nomia realizes the moment of truth and decides to give him a chance to rise in power before the day ends. Ninomiya then concluded that he was going to push harder and boost his skills along the way. This moment marks Ninomiya's start of his first hunting mission, where he must climb the dangerous dungeons. And then suddenly, the scary monsters started moving back and forth across the map, turning every clear zone into an endless fight. Moments later, as Ninomiya steps out of his room to find a monster lurking in the Kabi Ward, he knows he must be ready for whatever comes next. Just as the shadow of a storm began to fall, he stumbled into a small group of guys who looked exactly like hunters. They wandered toward Ninomiya, wondering if the rare treasures had already disappeared behind the looming monsters, as the duo was left with nothing. Ninomiya speaks softly, knowing he's lost his own heart. The second thing he said was that one of the men immediately raised his hand with a sharp claw, ready to strike. He shouted at his friends before clutching the edge of a table as Ninomiya lunged for her knife, causing the two men to drop their weapons in an attempt to save herself. The very fact that he ran away so fast after the first hit made Nomia realize she was standing right in front of a team of bandits ready to crush her. Ninomiya jumps back in fear and screams, but the heavy weight he lifts instantly pulls them both right into the ground before they can even scream. Ninomiya chooses carefully between killing the pair or letting him win his prize, knowing that winning those points means defeating the monster himself. It really seems like a possibility might not be so low at first, and suddenly he's realizing he needs to stay vigilant as his friends turn out to be very dangerous. Ninomiya decided that the monsters would finally eat him, but he wouldn't let the humans take his place either. So, he's got a plan and wants to try it. Later on, Ninomiya saw a swarm of scary monsters rushing through the streets to start things off. Ninomiya suddenly stops and looks up with a surprised expression as she finds herself staring at a toy whistle doll. It's a funny thing about how those whistles can catch people off guard when they're watching something else on the screen, just like Ninomiya was doing in this story. It was just a perfectly normal day when all those scary monsters started gathering right beside that little doll for fun. Ninomiya didn't feel quite happy because those scary monsters were so tiny, just 4 of them, and he wanted much more. Still, he pulls back the heavy bars of his trap cage to hold those 4 in safely. One day, after locking everyone inside his cage, he decided to teach them something entirely new and exciting. He stirs his copy mirror, a glowing replica of reality that instantly stretches every monster inside to dance faster and bigger. Usually, this spot looks like a deadly trap, yet because the monsters are already locked inside, it becomes the perfect stage where Ninomiya can execute his ultimate plan. He wanted more, so the monsters kept racing through the cage until Ninomiya finally left them to wait for a full cage. It's all about how many scary monsters you kill. The harder they are to fight, the more magic you unlock. Ninomiya decides to crush every monster at once so he can grow much bigger. Oh, when the cage fills up until Ninomiya screams for more, the disaster weight kicks in and explodes. A giant beast drops down like a rock and crushes the monsters together in one go. Ninomiya is so proud of his clever plan. He decides to name his prison a experience cube, thinking this special box will let him smash through hundreds of scary monsters one by one. His surprise at the massive level up was so huge that he also unlocked a brand new skill just as he did. The new rule of the game is called trap domination, and when a monster gets stuck in that special zone, Ninja's power becomes stronger because he can stop them from escaping. When a mysterious figure in the shadows finally stops looking terrified and sees you, Ninomiya's eyes light up with a sudden, terrifying smile. He looks at you like he's just found something that could break him completely, knowing that perhaps you are becoming his true ally. Suddenly, a monster from yesterday shows up, so he tries the new trick immediately. The spell bounced back because he fired the skill too hard. It seems like a tricky beast to begin with, yet once he sees the trap monster, he instantly understands how to solve everything. It's these scary creatures that look exactly like the ninjutsu ninja you're fighting, because they aren't normal monsters at all. The injured warrior had no worth to save, so Ninomiya ended his fight with that ultimate blade. Nomia finally decided to scan the spot right next to her sister before heading straight for them. Nomia places his hand down and takes in every inch of the room by his keen senses. Suddenly, he sees a huge pile of black boxes locked inside the room. What's waiting in those dark corners could be dangerous things. The guy pauses to take a closer look at the grand hall, only to find himself standing in an odd underground tunnel right behind it. Nomia suddenly realizes his next move must be the museum, and the world stops spinning while he waits for the right moment to act. He quickly stumbled upon a massive lake right next to a museum, so he didn't stop to look at it, because he was already staring at the exhibit before he even crossed the water's edge. Nomia wasted no time rushing into the museum, knowing that because he had already checked it out, the entire place was full of deadly traps. Nomia figured out that moving slowly was actually the best move, and thus she wasn't hit by any of the traps. Suddenly, the master of the trap dominates Nomia with a fierce smile as he grabs that fake treasure by the throat. Surprisingly, the ability worked perfectly, and Nomia was delighted to find out he had relied on his gut feeling instead of relying solely on his brain. Basically, this monster acts like a shiny treasure chest to get you caught in its traps, making it very special and unique among all the other scary creatures. Nomia didn't freak out, because he had seen right through that building long before anyone else did. So Nomia isn't unhappy. She's actually thrilled that her domination move hit a monster, and now they're allies. Suddenly, a fierce treasure monster began acting completely off balance as he darted toward Nomia, leaving her stunned to question whether his trickery really worked. Before the monster caught his eye and saw that he was alive, he flinched as his legs bucked against the floor, sending him stumbling back into the darkness. He didn't panic at first. He saw a kid acting wild and realized the monster was just playing with him too. Oh no! Nomia sees a monster clinging to his arm and screams as he turned around. Nomia smiles with a grin as she checks on her trapped friends, knowing that this deadly game isn't about surviving anymore. It's just about getting through. She nods at him and heads down the dark hole with a determined look, ready to face whatever comes next. Step in and watch Nomia feel overwhelmed as that massive opening comes to her. He figured out that space wasn't made from nothing at all. Instead, it grew up as a dungeon back before it even had a single name. It turns out he already knew exactly why those empty spaces were made for a specific reason, whether it was building a wall to hide from giants over the ground or another clever plan. Nomia isn't quite sure which way to go, so she leans on the table and says, "No, I'll make you a monster." He sees the road covered in danger because the shortcuts cost him more money than any real escape ever could. He paused mid-journey, realizing that before leaving the forest, he had to give the mysterious creature a name. He chose Mimi for her name. Mimi was so excited that she suddenly jumped up. Mimi nods at Nomia with a grin while he tells her to watch out for what's coming next, all because she loves his name so much. Mimi gently bowed his head before stepping back, confirming that he was ready to step into the light of hope. With that move, the two stepped into the new room, and when Nomia finally opened her door behind him, she found a giant statue sitting perfectly still at the center of the space. Nomia flustered as the hallway was empty, save for a majestic statue looming behind a heavy door leading straight out of her house. Nomia casually strides forward when it happens as she turns into a living woman and immediately lunges at him. Yet, Nomia instantly stumbles back, weaving a solid stone barrier right as he reaches for the very last bit of his head. The Nomia knew before they even saw it, thinking the statue might be a trick monster waiting to strike. Oh wow, you know how some statues change their shape to look scary when they get too close? Yeah, you got it right. Before stepping into the room, Nomia already showed Nomia that a monster lurked inside. Nomia carefully stepped forward near the statue because he couldn't crush her with power yet. The only way to change her form would be to hold her so tightly that she felt his hand and forced her to become him. Now that the statue is working, she's chasing down Nomia. The girl stands right behind Nomia and barely manages to shield her attacker from hit, even though she's still in a line of fire. 9 tiny stones are suddenly pulled back by a sudden gust of wind when Nomia realizes the giant statue holds them all. The statue moves too quickly, so she tries to blend in with its chaotic energy while racing toward where Nino's eyes are finally closing. He was so sure of his guess that the statue appeared right behind him and nearly cut him in its way. Nomia holds his breath as the wind blows through the tall grass and leaves a trail of dust behind him. Then it dawned upon Nomia that fighting the statue head was pointless because she was actually a trap monster. Nomia decided to strike with a terrifying trap to seal her pact for the statue. Nomia fires the first shot and it hits her on the head, leaving her confused. Then he wonders if magic was nullified or if his skill level was simply too low to build up that new competence. Mimi isn't a tiny monster. This statue will do much harder work before it falls. Nomia rushed through his next move and immediately grabbed the statue, trying to use the trap domination spell before it finally worked. Nomia fired a second round and missed that time, only to find the giant was moving so quickly he couldn't even dodge anymore. It feels like a sudden chill when he finally understands that his very first shot was just a lucky break. Yet Nomia suddenly sees him as an opportunity because he can read the statue's hidden paths and tricks. 1 second later, the statue dissolved into nothingness as Nomia quickly set a trap, ready to flush the scene clear. Nomia pulls back her napkin while the statue stands just behind him, and she's already about to slice him with her knife as soon as the wash tub triggers its trap. So Nomia turns the statue into a worse monster, and this time there's no escape. Nomia lets out a sharp cry as she violently strikes her sword toward him. He sidesteps effortlessly, watching with wide eyes how the ancient guardian seems to grow even more furious under his relentless blows. But Nomia has a new opportunity to track the statue's moves because the water shows up right on its path. Nomia keeps shooting her trap domination spell so she can finally crush that giant statue and become his true friend. Moments later, Nomia still couldn't stop working hard, yet she refuses to quit because she's completely determined to make this statue her true ally. Mimi has hidden behind a wall because she fears her guardian, Nomia, will take her own life. Nomia watches his hands drop empty, realizing he's running out of mana and staring at that final chance to win before disappearing into the shadows. Just then, the statue began its run after him. With nothing but a chance and no backup plan, Nomia forces himself to take one final, desperate shot at winning the fight before it ends. Nomia dumps his whole life onto the stage, shoots the giant statue in a blast of fire while gasping for air before it hits him. And the final kick drove her straight into a hard halt. Nomia was stunned by the sight of it, wondering if her skill would prove effective later on. Then he spotted a ghostly shadow disappearing from the wall without him even seeing it move first, which made him wonder if his own magic had actually been able to stop something else. Just as the statue collapsed on her knees, calling Nomia her master and apologizing for its insolvency. Oh, Nomia gasps as the beast speaks, and for once she realizes the creature isn't just wild. It's a genuine ally ready to talk back. Nomia tells her exactly what to do about revealing who she is. She stepped back out of her hood to show off that incredible white hair and pretty face. Nomia asked for her name because she was just an unnamed servant, but she said nothing more than that she doesn't want to be anyone special. He only needs one person to keep working for him. Jean was named after the brave knight before Nomia looked down with wonder and decided to give herself that title so no one would ever be afraid of her again. Nomia finds a new meaning in Jean's name, and Jean happily shares her feelings of thanks with her. Mimi rushes over to Jean to claim she's right before he even finishes his name. Jane quietly told Mimi that she wouldn't step up to take her place. Instead, she was all about helping her get along with a new leader. Nomia blinked as he saw them fighting, and then he realized they were actually talking about something far more dangerous than any fight. Nomia explains they must go ahead, while Jean insists on staying back, because the real fight comes later in the battle with the boss. The legendary area boss was finally slumped into a bed of sleep, until Jean woke him up with an explosive reveal. Nomia freezes in shock as he demands a new explanation from the man standing beside him. Jean stepped forward, revealing with a grin that she was actually the gatekeeper of the dungeon. She stepped into the battle zone, where the area boss watched her as the moment of transformation finally made its mark, sending a loud alarm right across their faces so everyone could get ready before it was too late. Jean tells him that the fight can't be avoided because leaving the dungeon means losing the chance to defeat that boss there. Nomia's eyes widen in shock as she hears the terrifying announcement. You have to fight this area boss right now. He suddenly snaps out of his confusion as the road was too narrow for him. Without hesitation, he shouts, "No, we must turn around and go up." Jean quietly tells him that the impossibility doesn't vanish when they talk anymore. He knows things truly cannot be solved. Jean knew his life was over when he stepped onto the threshold. In a single step forward, there was nowhere to go and nothing left to turn around. The boy told him his only escape was inside the boss's dungeon. Nomia jumps into the room and tells Jean, "You can't even try to take on an area boss anymore. You're completely out of mana right now." Just as Nomia spotted Mimi reaching for him, she pulled out a mana potion and handed it to her friend. Nomia is shocked to see Mimi drink a massive dose of a potion so quickly, thinking he's about to win his big fight before Jean even realizes he needs that water magic trait back. So the enemy boss isn't just any monster. They're actually a ghost version of burning hot fire. You need to pull in many skilled water wizards and blast them with a huge wave of cool water at the same time to stop it from roaring away. Ninomiya stares at the ground and thinks, asterisk, oh no, I'm screwed because I have nothing to drink. Asterisk, he pauses for a moment and then races forward to snap his fingers and create an idea from the ashes of thought. He couldn't get out of his house because he had come in there to hide, so he asked Jane whether she could handle a monster himself, and she said yes. The heavy room shook as Ninomiya began to work through his plans while the chaos of the moment finally took hold. Jean bursts into the room and sees that area boss is already so burnt out they've decided to face him head on, but he immediately tries to save Nomia by casting a shield against the hot flames. They didn't wait long before the whole place turned into a fiery blaze that could burn down even their own house. A terrifying beam from the area boss left Nomiya's mind, screaming with fear for nothing she saw. Ninomiya steps aside as the whole room begins to unravel around him, offering a brave shield for her friends to stay safe. After all that chaos settles into peace, the boss walks out and gives a scary look at you. Ninomiya finally realized that every room she had walked through was simply a narrow alleyway, rushing straight toward the boss. Ninomiya knew that leaving the room was their only hope against the danger, so she decided to act quickly as soon as possible to save everyone's lives. Ninomiya whispers, I need a special thing you've got, so take care of it yourself as soon as I tell you. So Ninomiya sits down right next to Mimi and whispers the secret to her. Ninomiya sits right as the area boss launches an attack against them. The Nomia and his crew were pulled into a wild, unexpected detour that left everyone scrambling for a safe exit before realizing they might be trapped somewhere they didn't expect. The ninja steps into the springboard, letting his friends soar away from the terrifying boss before he can even hit the ground. By the moment he swings his legs to face the door, Mimi has already stepped right into it. Fortunately, Mimi can really make it in because she's a monster. Ninomiya prays for Mimi to do all the right things because, like everyone else, it's really up to her. The Nomia sprinted forward and slammed into the boss's back, sending a swirling black vortex of energy out from his chest as he vanished into thin air at once. This tiny hole at the end of the line lets everything go out freely. Just as the boss decided to unleash a massive second wave of attacks, he abruptly cut them short to protect the important master behind him. Jean sees Ninomiya smile and nods to her, letting her know she doesn't have to fight anymore. Jean dives in on Ninomiya, who has set up a trap with a fake leg, hoping to distract the boss before they can move. In a tense moment near the warp hole Jean created, Ninomiya demands Jean hold his position while he plunges deep, and instantly he launches himself into combat action. Jean takes charge as the world turns upside down, so Nino can finally hear her own voice say, Mimi. Mimi just got mad after Mimi told her to run straight away, because the museum looked like a trap. She didn't waste any time. She leaped right off the edge into the lake right then and there, while Nomia stayed behind watching over his boss, so he wouldn't get lost again. Moments after, John found a perfect spot and turned down the call immediately. The boss's leg gets cut by her, and she holds it up to show he can't walk anymore. Jane pulled Ninomiya away from the chaos and let her handle the crushing weight of the boss's new spell while the team moves forward in that carefully crafted plan with Mimi. It turns out she put the other end of the warp hole into Mimi's chest before she even got out. When the water finally settles to the bottom of the lake, the drop into the hole where Ninomiya built a nozzle feels like a wild goose chase, turning into something else entirely. Suddenly, as the area boss stepped down from his throne, he felt a cold wave of water splash onto his face. When he finally turns his body to face the darkness inside, suddenly a torrent of rushing water cascades from that terrifying opening. The sudden rush of rushing water sprays everywhere and hits him like a physical blow that never stops. As the water keeps pouring in, Ninomiya urges Jean to stand behind him so he can create a wall to stop them from getting washed away. Ninomiya quickly creates a prison wall that blocks intrusion from the outside. Ninomiya is glad that everything worked out well. Basically, to defeat the boss area under normal circumstances would require an entire unit of hunters who are capable of water magic. Since there was no way to generate water from the ground up, Ninomiya had no choice but to tell Mimi to head to the lake while he set up a portal. It wasn't just that the water poured down, it flowed down in a way that made everyone jump for joy. With the boss trapped under the water, his core became visible, and Jean tells Ninomiya to take the chance to destroy it. Ninomiya swings her long sword through the air with finality and delivers a brutal finish that ends the fight completely. Just then, Mimi poured the water from the portal in her cup, while Ninomiya stepped in beside her to praise her hard work. Ninomiya keeps clapping her hands while a sudden thud of metal makes her realize the sword has fallen, too. Nomia gasped as her eyes widened when she saw the gleaming blade of magic stand right before her face. Jean stepped forward and yelled at him, "Take that sword. It's a hidden treasure, so you gotta get it before anyone sees it." He looked back with wide eyes, ready to run. It blows him up because Nomia hears that a truly uncommon item has been found. Jean decided to check the bottom of the lake because a sword usually stays up in the air when it falls, so he waited for the water to let it drop. Jean tells Nomia to follow his order and pulls a giant sword straight from the earth. Suddenly, a huge surge of energy blasts across the battlefield as the screen flashes to reveal. The sword, named Sword of Mystic Light, holds an untapped secret power, yet the magical aura stays locked away behind it. Nomia had no idea which way the sword pointed, yet he figured it out by using it to search for something else. Suddenly, the whole room shook violently and terrified the entire nine form. Jean suddenly shouts, "Nomia, calm down. The tremor is just a sign that they've beaten the area boss. The ground is already shaking now, so we can move straight into the next zone before it gets too dangerous." Nomia starts his journey on the road toward the border, where he meets a group heading straight for a ward before they can even reach their destination. Even though many things have happened, Jean is so glad that they got through this far. As Nomia steps up behind him and notices the hunters approaching, Jean immediately urges John to hide inside before the monsters get there. Soon the hunters arrive at Nomia's hidden sanctuary and demand to know exactly what that terrifying monster has been up to. Nomia scratched his head, puzzled, before looking back at the rescue team and suddenly realizing they were exactly what was needed to help him. Suddenly, a muffled whisper echoes from the back door, telling everyone to take a deep breath and stop running. He walked forward, staring intently at his tablet, and to his astonishment, he discovered that Nomia was a high-skill, dangerous stray hunter with an impressive R-class skill level. He revealed that the big names had talked about him for weeks, while he just worked on one of those tough bosses. That rugged guy was absolutely thrilled to find this mysterious figure in his life, and wasted 0 minutes turning her over to the team, telling them to hop along with him since he has all the power needed to finish up their hunting registration before they even get off that spot. Nomia's eyes light up in excitement when he hears this because it's exactly what he's been waiting for all these years, and surprisingly, he refuses the offer, which shocks everyone else, even though his team leader is confused but still believes Nomia has good reasons to do so. The team leader told Nomia, "You can move around as much as you want." He whispers to the patient about the angry hunters who have been coming for hours at a time into the nursing home. No matter how many times Nomia gets caught up in trouble with those weird people, his jaw still feels a little tight because he hears them talking about that guy. This warning from Nomia says he must watch out just in case things get worse. Once the wild pack of hunters has vanished, Nomia whispers to her friends, telling them that now it's safe enough for them to step out into the open world. Jin paused and asked Nomia, "Do you think I picked the best path because I didn't team up with those last hunters?" Nomia sighs as she hears him stop trying to become an official hunter, knowing for the first time that the whole thing isn't really going to matter anymore at all. He isn't even close enough yet to trust anyone about how things are unfolding right now. Nomia wanted to tell Jean that he no longer needed the hunters, but instead said he had all the right people on his team, Jean and Mimi. Jean and Mimi are both so flushed with embarrassment that they look like they're about to cry in silence. Moments later, the clinic arrives at IA Ward, where Nomia decides to scan every room before making any moves. The ancient wizard Nomia suddenly clicks his fingers on the stone floor, and with a jolt of energy, a strange, glowing shape bursts forth from where he had left nothing behind. Lucas and his party head off into the Watani district, where they meet a man in an amusement park who confirms it is indeed the location Lucas had spotted earlier with his mysterious trap scan. He knew this was the moment he couldn't leave that strange mark behind him. So instead of following his original plan to travel to the West District and talk to Shiori, he decided to stay put there instead. Takasa refuses to take detours because he wants to finish the amusement park before he even gets back on track. As his group walks into the park, Mimi drops her shoe to check for trouble, and suddenly he finds a strange object hiding in the distance. A pavement lined with warning signs blocks his path as it leads deep into a world where an ancient, mighty destroyer has already broken down giants and crushed everything beneath its feet. Curious, Takasa stumped himself by asking what the destroyer means when Jean reminds him to stay alert because it could end things badly. There are these rare and heavy traps that look totally different from anything else, yet nobody knows exactly what they do until you trigger them. The moment Tsukasa heard that phrase, his whole world went quiet and he didn't know what to do about it. Tsukasa kept staring at the asphalt because he loved figuring out who was on it, but he had a smarter choice. Instead of taking his foot off the ground, he slipped away into the shadows and let the world handle that mystery for him. So, They slipped away from that spot and stepped into a thick woods, making their way desperately toward the western district before running out of time. Takasa tried hard to hold her breath, while the forest map didn't tell her exactly how dense the trees were around here. They keep pushing forward as he watches a group of hunters try to fight off a monster, and he recognizes that these are the team from the Hunter Association. They fought so long and didn't know how to talk to each other afterward, so they ran straight for him and jumped right in to stop the monster from tearing off their lives. And then, all of a sudden, she saw a bright light darting toward the beast, while the hunter charged straight for it, wielding his sword as he went. She leaps back, not realizing the blade has already been struck by the next swing, and a deafening rumble of shock waves blasts across the forest before she even hears the sound. Jean trembled as he whispered, demanding Takasa stay safe, while Suka stared intently at the shadowy figure just stepping into the light. She stands there smiling at the pack of hunters, a proud hunter named Sumaji Asahina, who's been serving their ranks since childhood, ready to say her goodbyes if they're not going in for the ultimate challenge. She walked over to the group and said, "Look, I'm going to find the seed boss. It's all about her." Sukesa watched Sumaji intently as she defended herself, proving her actions were far more than ordinary. He listens as she gathers a team to face the boss in a new arena, noticing how many ordinary folks crowd around her makes it harder for her to lift that heavy weight alone. Jean learned early that the hunters didn't want a new partner for her, so she stepped back as if the situation was wrong before they even got there. The villagers decided to abandon their camp and head out into the wild, but as soon as they reached the water's edge, the forest suddenly vanished behind them, only to return in the next moment when someone pointed up at a massive river flowing right beside them. Then he felt someone after him, calling out, "I've always known who you are." Sukesa waits until someone won't step up, then pulls the trigger on the fireball he's built and lets them burn themselves dry. Sukasa stepped forward from behind his hiding place, but his friend immediately pleaded with him that he wouldn't strike him down. It's a normal soldier walking down the woods when someone knocks on his door and asks if he wants to see Mr. Sukasa. At first, Sukasa was puzzled by Mimi standing so right beside him, but then everything clicked with a sudden, surprising realization that made him smile on. He calmed the man down and stepped in confidently to introduce himself as an independent hunter with a few strange friends along the way. The guy who learned Sukasa was a hunter lets out a big sigh of relief first, then begs him for his help, telling him he's lost and needs some direction to get back home safely. Sukesa pauses to think and wonders why the detour will take so much time because he's on the clock. He thought about how scary monsters always showed up nearby and decided to grab a jetpack to take the fireball up to where Samuki was leading her team. Takasa pulls out a gun and says, "Now follow me." The man feels relieved when his family returns to their house, yet a sudden bump knocks him against Mimi, causing the magical chest to scold him. He sprinted into the forest and immediately saw a monster, which meant he'd be caught by hunters looking for clues on his trail. So, he tells Jean and Mimi to wait behind him, while he alone guides that mysterious man toward the place known as the Association. He told them everything, so now they follow his lead and drop back down into the woods. The old man tried chatting casually with Sukasa after hours spent walking, but the legendary warrior kept his eye on him like a hawk watching for a sudden beast that might tear through the night. Meanwhile, the geyser thinks its own plans might be working better than Suka's, but as if to comfort her, he notes that Suka is still too naive to know when monsters really start being a real threat. He charges in to hit Sukasa from the back, but Sukasa deflects the punch with a reflexive strike, turning into an enemy before he could land it again. Then Sukasa revealed he knew the hunter would stop him if he stayed, but instead, the man turned on him and started running away after being warned of the danger. The man saw that he was already dead, so when he showed Takasa the stolen sword, he confidently said he'd taken it by mistake because he was just knocked out long ago. He grabbed the sword and shouted, "I can instantly look into an enemy's gear and snatch the most valuable piece." The bandit knows Sukasa is a fierce warrior and instantly decides to smash her down by swinging his massive sword through her chest. However, as he swings, he trips over a small wooden log hidden in the mud right next to her feet. Immediately, thorny vines surge around him, strangling his freedom as the sudden appearance of traps made the bandit scream at Sukesa, who then admitted he had nothing to hide about what happened next. Suka says after pointing out the hole, "I've been hitting you exactly where I thought would be, because I know the hole's right here." A secret trap scan from one of his superpowers lets him reach out to grab a rare sword right there for everyone to see. Takasa holds a knife in his hand, whispering the lie to the bandit. "You haven't even touched it yet. If you wish to become my experiment, I'd rather be your subject than let you die." He immediately tossed his freedom onto the ground in front of the treasure chest to chase away the demons. Sukasa jumps up and asks, "Are you sure this thing really is right here?" He wasn't expecting that bandit at all. After all, he'd been using his trap scanner on this spot before and was completely oblivious to any hidden treasure lurking there. In almost every case, a rare item gets stuck right where people look at it and never lets you touch it. Jean steps forward suddenly from behind Tsukasa, only to be caught off guard by her impossible scannability because it misses every single item, just as she fails to locate the legendary sword hidden deep within the lake. When she saw him, she told him she and Mimi were running so quickly to catch every sound of battle that came their way. She heard that the geyser was a cruel monster and immediately told Tsukasa to give him the kill. With a swift flick of her hand, she slammed into the guard's throat before he could even scream, while the man rushed back with his arms wide in shock as she vanished back inside. He tried his best while panicking because he only knew one way to catch the hunter before the time ran out, finding the secret clue right at the moment he spotted an animal trying to eat him. As he walked deep into the dark ravine, the towering cliff face suddenly seemed to shake and begin to drift toward him, finally revealing the terrifying giant monster that had been lurking just out of sight. Confused, Tsukasa asked him about the monster and the hidden item, yet the bandit scolded her, declaring it clear enough that this massive creature was guarding the secret spot. Tsukasa analyzed the situation and assumed the bandit was moving toward him, yet Jeannie reminded him that following someone so bad would be a terrible idea. She says she knows where the secret items are hiding, but they can be found in any easy spot just for a quick escape from hunters. When she heard the bandit's warning, Tsukasa made a smart decision and decided to follow him through the foggy night. He hoped the item would actually show him Shiori, so they could both see each other clearly. He told the bandit, "Lead the way and promise I'll never let you take my hold." A loud bang echoed behind him as all of a sudden, in a split second, Sumaji jumped and sliced off both Sumi and the vines before he could dodge it. Jean jumps into Takasa's corner, and Sumaji immediately charges him for hunting without a license, promising to shut him down if he doesn't pull his head off. Susha stares at her news as a group of hunters blocks Jay's way to safety. Lucy and she try hard to fight the monsters, but Lucy tells Jean to be careful because they were misread all along. Samuki rushes to hit Tsukasa, only for his sudden wooden shield to pop in and save his face. She squeezed him tightly as she checked on Jean and Mimi, who were clearly close to their true friends now. Her voice dropped low, almost like a warning, telling him they had never been truly enemies before. She tries hard to keep Tsukasa at bay while a freed bandit leaves for good. But Jana wonders why Jin can still speak so clearly when the others are silent about it all. So Tsukasa decides to let Jin save Mimi instead of letting him get killed by the hunters. She bolted off into a blur of pure speed as soon as he grabbed the chest, leaving her alone for the rest of the trip. Samuki jumped into the fight right after Tukas threw his own shield in his face, sending him flying back as the two heroes collided with each other. She tells her army to encircle the giant and tell them not to fear the monsters, for she has chosen the ringleader as their greatest protector. She yells at him that she wants her men to leave, though she says he was defeated so badly in the fight that they were lost by 4-1. Surprise! To their shock, the girl realizes she is wrong when the hero pulls out a strange sword to show off his strength against everyone at once. He grabbed the blade instantly and shouted, "It's time for something truly wild." The other A-rank hunters think Tsukasa is bluffing because it's not even possible for him to defeat these guys with that incredibly short sword. It was like a sudden storm where their leader ignored Samuki's command and let Tsukasa turn on a pinball panicking machine while slashing at everything in chaos. It felt like a sharp slap of momentum from a ricochet, slamming the hunters off their feet and knocking them all over the place. Samuki watched the cracks in Tsukasa's walls with a puzzled look and realized their secret wasn't hidden away. They were right here, waiting for something to break them open again. They were all thrown down when she thrust that tiny blade through them, causing everyone on the floor to gasp as their flesh screamed in pain. They're staring at their bleeding scars and suddenly see the truth. They've all been poisoned by something. It was Tsukasa's turn to retrieve the sword. Suddenly, he learned a terrifying truth. Any blade that got sliced would instantly send him into a pit of status ailments. He loved the blade, but knew it wouldn't end the fight. As a result, Samuki flew forward with the weapon and aimed to stop him from hurting his teammates before he could react. Tsukasa pulls back the heavy sword, letting his secret trap weave through his fingers so that he can strike Tsumi squarely on her back before pulling away completely. Suddenly, the feeling of being poisoned made her pause before checking her back again. She quickly found out that it wasn't poison, but a cold bite from an ice attack. Tsukasa instantly confirmed that his short sword's color had already shifted just before he even touched it. That simple move allowed him to switch a weapon's power on and off at will with no effort needed. Sumi hesitates not to lose her temper, and with a deep breath of concentrated power in her mind, She slams her fists onto the ground and unleashes a devastating slash of light energy that slices through the air instantly. Quickly, multiple slashes flew toward him, but he tried desperately to dodge with his short sword, finding himself unable to stop them entirely. The gun shoots through the air, and Samuki slashes across her body as if she's dodging bullets. Then she caught the sword mid-air by grabbing onto the very thing that was supposed to be it. Yet when she pulled away, it instantly turned into a tiny twig and made a puff of fog appear around her hand. And right then, Tsukasa lunged at her as she lowered her guard again. She stared at him as he finally pulled out the blade from its hidden sheath and said, "No wonder you were so afraid. I thought you'd never let me touch it again. You can't just shut your eyes if you're going to play tricks on him. He gave you the chance to set up the traps before you did." Sumeji stood up straight, trying to push the man away, though he kept staring at her with a strange intensity. As she finally fell onto her knees, she realized that maybe there was no escape now. Oh, the man told his wife that she was suddenly paralyzed. He then advises her and her comrades to take a light recovery potion to heal from their wounds. Surprised, Sumeji asks him why he's showing the mercy by refusing to finish them off, but he tells her that he has no intention of stealing nor finishing them, but he had to end the meaningless battle. She woke up to hear him tell her the truth. She wasn't a bad hunter before, and it was only after those words did she believe him completely. She apologized gently, but the couple simply covered up their mistake with a sealed lid to hide what happened. Suddenly, the ground shook and they saw a massive rock monster sprinting toward them. When Takasa looked at the monster that the bandit mentioned before, he wondered again if it was indeed the same creature from his past. Sumeji tells him that the monster is a scary area boss and explains exactly where they are looking for it, because both of them have been hunting it for a long time now. She showed him the device that made sure it was definitely an illegal place to live. As luck would have it, a thief's eye twitched and caught a black shadow, chasing him through the shadows. Luckily, the monster didn't spot the man, so he struck the ground instead, which caused a huge accident and left the illegal hunter stumbling in the middle of it. Sucesso leaps into the warp portal so quickly that he instantly asks for an explanation while demanding it immediately. Even after feeling threatened, that useless geyser admits exactly how much he felt before the monster came to life. But this time around, he'd gone after Tsukasa's squad to wake up that beast, only for it to chase everyone instead of his team. He calculated wrong and ended up being chased down alone by the monster. The guy got furious because someone stole his money and turned out to be a real monster. But as he stops mid-interrogation and sees a giant rock looming over them, he freezes in shock. A sudden rush of power pushes Tsukasa forward as he avoids a falling stone and tries to grab his friend for help. During that time period, Sumeji tried to hide with his men, but their forces were too strong for him. Luckily, Tsukasa used a trap spell to hit the monster's head while trying to distract it, and he was immediately surprised when the beast saw how the bait was working. Suka then ran wild into the woods where a beast soon chased after him. He's so proud because the injured hunters are all back and ready to hunt again, even though they were scared when they saw the big monster. Jean and Mimi take a nice walk along the water while he tries desperately to find a new spot where he can actually fight. Jean is listening intently as Mimi explains that the roar of falling rocks had long since passed, only for a terrifying monster suddenly burst through the air right before their eyes. They look up in alarm as Takasa reaches out, gripping onto something that feels like an unwinding rope or a solid branch mid-breath. Takasa watches his men move toward a deadly fight with no choice but to lead them into the arena where that monster finally finds its mark, turning their reckless rush into a desperate struggle against the inevitable attack. Takasa is staring at a giant, hardened beast while multiple flying slashes hit the area, so she and her friends rush over to help. Tsukasa is shocked to find Samuji giving him credit for saving the day after a tough battle. Takasa stepped forward, knowing exactly what to say, because her profile on the hunter database confirmed that he was indeed the man who had taken down all the big bosses alone. She tries so hard to sound like she knows everything about him, but fails, so she immediately jumps at the idea of introducing herself and apologizes for that lack of understanding. Her teammates tell her they didn't hit anyone while she was fighting. Once she learned the truth, she urgently asked Tsukasa if he had any idea on how to stop that big secret before it became public. And then she pulls out her sword, demanding he hand over his very life for the battle ahead of us. Tsukasa stares at the distant line of troops and wonders if Sumeji will be reckless or if she's just a very kind-hearted girl. They finally had the troops to crush that beast, so he didn't bother thinking about it anymore. A bright spark ignites in his chest before he even sees the chance to say it out loud. Before doing anything else, he asks them if they are actually ready to fight right now, exactly as he has ordered. And once Sumi assures him, the other hunters have no choice but to follow their leader. So, they tighten their grip around their weapons and prepare to set the trap that'll defeat.